Thomas Reynolds, the CEO of one of the fastest-growing bakery chains in the country, sat in the driver's seat of his old sedan, staring at the storefront of Sweet Haven Bakery. His company had started with a single shop years ago, but after rapid expansion, he found himself far removed from the day-to-day operations. Lately, troubling reports had reached him, complaints about employee mistreatment, food quality issues, and even rumors of stolen ingredients. Instead of relying on corporate reports, Thomas decided to investigate firsthand. He grew out his stubble, put on an old flannel shirt, and wore a pair of scuffed sneakers to complete his disguise. Under the alias Tom Richards, a struggling baker looking for work, he had applied for a position at one of his own locations. As he stepped inside, the sweet aroma of fresh pastries filled the air, but something felt off. The staff moved frantically, their faces tense. A tall man in a grease-stained apron barked orders at a young girl behind the counter. "I said move faster, Mia. We don't have all day." The girl, barely in her teens, flinched and hurried to stack the trays. Thomas frowned. He hadn't approved hiring someone so young. "Hey, you the new guy?" The manager, Rick, barely looked up as he wiped his hands on his apron. "Yes, sir," Thomas replied, keeping his voice low. "Tom Richards. I was told to start today." Rick snorted. "All right, Tom. Hope you're ready to work. We don't do lazy around here." Thomas nodded, but inside, he was already uneasy. Something told him this was going to be worse than he expected. Thomas was quickly put to work in the back kitchen, kneading dough and preparing pastries under Rick's harsh supervision. It didn't take long for him to notice that something was very wrong. For starters, the ingredients were far from what his company's policies required. Instead of the high-quality flour and butter Sweet Haven prided itself on, the staff was using cheap off-brand products. The signature fillings, which were supposed to be fresh, had been swapped out for pre-packaged, expired alternatives. Thomas also saw that Mia, the young girl from earlier, was struggling to keep up. She wasn't just stacking trays, she was cleaning, restocking, and even handling cash at the register. Legally, no one under 16 was supposed to be working there, let alone doing multiple jobs at once. "Mia, move faster," Rick snapped again as she tried to carry a heavy sack of flour. Thomas stepped in. "Hey, I got that," he said, taking the load from her. Mia gave him a grateful look before quickly returning to her other tasks. Rick, however, scowled. "You don't do her work. She needs to learn." Thomas clenched his jaw. This wasn't about learning. This was exploitation. The deeper he observed, the worse it got. Rick took cash from the register and slipped it into his pocket when he thought no one was looking. He yelled at employees for minor mistakes but seemed to disappear into his office whenever things got too busy. Customers outside were waiting too long for their orders, and when they complained, they were met with rudeness or indifference. Thomas knew he had seen enough. He had started this business with a vision of quality and fairness, and what he was witnessing was a complete betrayal of that vision. But before confronting Rick, Thomas needed to see just how far this corruption went. And for that, he had one more move to make. Thomas decided it was time to push things further. He intentionally made a small mistake while preparing a batch of croissants, curious to see how Rick would react. As expected, Rick stormed over, his face red with anger. "What the hell is this?" Rick bellowed. "Are you an idiot? Do you know how much money you just wasted?" Thomas stayed calm. "I can fix it." Rick scoffed. "Fix it? You just cost us product and time. You're lucky I don't dock your pay for this." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Is that how you run things here? Stealing from the register and using expired ingredients?" Rick's face paled for a moment before he quickly recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. Who do you think you are, accusing me like that?" Just then, Mia walked past, carrying another heavy tray. Thomas seized the moment. "And making kids do the work of 3 people? Is that part of your business model too?" Rick's expression darkened. "Mind your own business, new guy." Thomas smirked. "That's the thing. I am minding my business." Before Rick could respond, Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out his employee badge, the one with his real name and title. As he flipped it open, The entire kitchen staff gasped. "I'm Thomas Hayes, the CEO of Sweet Haven." Rick's jaw dropped. The other employees exchanged stunned glances. Mia's eyes widened. "I've seen enough," Thomas continued. "You've been stealing, cutting corners, mistreating staff, and running this bakery into the ground. And it ends today." Rick's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I can explain," but Thomas held up a hand. "Save it. There's no excuse for this." The employees, once afraid to speak up, now watched in anticipation. They had all suffered under Rick's mismanagement, but now the tables had turned. Rick stumbled back, his face drained of color. "Look, I didn't mean—" Thomas cut him off. "You've lied, stolen, and mistreated my employees. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done to this bakery's reputation? To these people?" Rick tried to backpedal. "I was just trying to keep things running smoothly." "By stealing from the register? By making a teenage girl work double shifts with no pay? By serving expired ingredients to customers?" Thomas's voice was firm. "You're fired. Effective immediately." Rick's protest died in his throat. He looked around for support, but none of the employees came to his defense. Mia, for the first time, stood tall. "You can't do this," Rick finally snapped. "I can, and I just did," Thomas replied. "Security will escort you out." As if on cue, a security guard, who had been stationed outside, stepped in. Rick's face contorted in fury, but he had no choice. He threw off his apron and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. A silence filled the bakery before Mia broke it. "Is he really gone?" Thomas nodded. "For good." Cheers erupted. Employees hugged each other, relieved and excited for the future. Mia, who had endured the worst of Rick's abuse, wiped away tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Thomas turned to the team. "From now on, things will be different. Fair wages, proper training, no more cutting corners." He smiled at Mia. "And you've been carrying this place. You're getting a raise and a promotion if you want it." Mia gasped. "Me? A promotion?" "You've earned it," Thomas said warmly. As the bakery filled with laughter and celebration, Thomas felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had walked in expecting to observe, but instead he had changed lives. And this was just the beginning. The bakery buzzed with excitement as the news of Rick's firing spread. The employees, once afraid to speak up, finally felt heard. Thomas looked around at the team, a group of hard-working people who had been mistreated for far too long. He had come undercover to observe, but he had found something much deeper. Mia wiped her tears and looked up at Thomas. "I don't know what to say. I never thought someone would actually stand up for us." "You deserve it," Thomas said firmly. "All of you do." He turned to the entire staff. "From now on, this bakery will be a place where people are treated with respect, fair wages, proper schedules, and absolutely no cutting corners." The employees erupted into cheers. It wasn't just about Rick being gone. It was about the future. One of the older bakers stepped forward. "Thank you, sir. We love this bakery, but it hasn't felt like home in a long time." Thomas smiled. "Well, let's change that. Starting today." As he left the bakery that night, he took one last look at the neon sign glowing above the door. It wasn't just his business. It was a place that meant something to people. And now, it was finally in the right hands. Little did they know, the Undercover CEO had one more surprise in store: a full renovation of the bakery, better working conditions, and a huge bonus for all employees. Justice had been served. But more importantly, a new future had begun.